kind of lost in the day was that today was a Fed day. It wasn't really talked about that much going into today because it wasn't expected to be an actual movement in terms of rates, either up or down. And there seemed to be a little bit of controversy about what today's Fed decision actually meant. I honestly didn't have a chance to read the entire Fed minutes yet, but I did write down a summary. It's a little short, but it's good. Before I do my weekend review video, probably tonight, I will read the entirety of the Fed minutes. I assure you, it's riveting. I mean, it's almost like a romance novel. It's so, there's a lot of sex involved. You gotta have a nice snifter with cognac to just get through it. I mean, it's mind-numbing stuff, frankly. But yeah, it's pretty bad. And this is what I do for you guys. I will, I'll take that hit. I'll take one for the team. I will read those Fed minutes. And if there's anything different than what I find in my notes, they will be brought up in the weekend review video. Anyway, we know that the Fed, there was no change in terms of the interest rates. They are keeping the target for 0.75 to 1. They talked about that they're going to have gradual hikes. They didn't talk about any balance sheet changes, policy changes. For some reason, the media got themselves all excited that the Fed's going to start reducing their balance sheet. No, not really what's going to be discussed, and they're continuing their reinvestments. They talked about a bit of slowing growth. I will say this, there have been a couple of slower economic data, like I think the ISM manufacturing on Monday was like the first in 7 that missed, and then today, what was today? Today was the service. Yeah, today was the when it says non-manufacturing, that's service, and I believe that was a slight beat. Let me just open that bad boy up. Yeah, it beat consensus and it topped the last range. So growth is still accelerating, but at maybe a slower pace than it had been. Nothing barn burning here, and nothing that would, in my view, warrant them getting jiggy with hiking rates more aggressively, and for sure not, needing to press on the balance sheet. They talk about household spending being modest. They talked about a decline in core inflation. The Fed is all worried about inflation, right? I mean, there's a decline in core inflation, and now with energy prices going lower, again, they keep talking about meeting their 2% mandate. They haven't met it yet, so I don't know why they're still talking about, worrying about inflation. Of course, this is all transitory, which just means that eventually they'll be right, according to their logic. And then they talked about inflation and growth stabilizing, which means slowing, in my view. Then they said the jobs gains were solid. I don't know what numbers they've been looking at, but I haven't been all that impressed with the jobs numbers of late. A couple days ago, the Atlanta Fed had raised their GDP forecast to 4.6%. The Atlanta Fed likes to play these little games. They like to raise their growth forecasts higher and then lower them a little bit, or they like to lower them too much and then raise them a little bit. They're all over the place. I was giving the example at dinner last night to my cousin. We were joking around about the Fed. And I said to him, betting on the Fed's growth forecast is like going to a guy who's bet the Super Bowl wrong for the past 9 years and then, getting ready to bet the farm on whatever they pick this year because, eventually they'll be right. I mean, it's insanity. These guys, it's just like the gang that can't shoot straight. It's complete ridiculous. I think they just come up with these numbers and they just throw them out there, and then they kind of just are winging it, which is unbelievable. So all that being said, as far as the expectations for a rate hike in June, they are high. They are still 67.4%. So I would assume that I had thought we were going to start hiking a little bit more later in the year, but we'll see. Maybe the Fed is going to pull the. I thought they were going to go September, December. Now maybe they'll do June, December. I mean, I'm not sure if they're going to want to get too jiggy with rates around a potential government shutdown, which might happen in September, but we'll see how that plays out. So that is that as far as what I see. As far as the big momentum name earnings, they follow a very similar pattern every report. Usually the early ones are either up, and then the second half ones are down, or the first half ones are down, and then the second half ones are up. And then it kind of like goes that way. So you have like a bifurcation in the big, names. So Amazon was up and Google is up. Google's actually resolving much higher now. They're coming along pretty well. And then Amazon was up, and then they sold it off. Then it kind of ripped back, and now it's kind of listing around up near the highs. It really needs to clear those 950s though to get another move higher. So, oh wow, John, please post that on Twitter. I appreciate that. Some guy doubled up his account, it sounded like, based on watching my videos. That's fantastic news. So Mazel Tov, congratulations. The issue for me is going to be a lot of these stocks have run. Now you have the second tier reporting here. And I'm not talking about second tier in terms of quality. I'm just talking about second tier in terms of the date that they reported, meaning the calendar. And you have now Apple, which came out and we know was down. Apple's actually getting slapped on around after hours, but this is on another unrelated headline based on Qualcomm. Qualcomm's now seeking an import ban on the Apple iPhone. That's never happening, but I think that they're looking to kind of give Apple a little bit of the business because they've been holding back royalties, and I think they're trying to force a settlement. So yeah, Apple's getting hit a little bit after hours, but news always falls along the line of least resistance, and I guess the news is not good. So what do I do with Apple? My answer to that is very simple. We have a earnings day range now. That is today's range. The low of the day was 144.27. The high of the day today was 147.49. So it's either a long above, and the highs today are poor, so it doesn't surprise me there was a little bit of a back off. No, I'm sorry, was that? Yeah, that was with the RTH highs. So I think you could play long above it or short below. Very simple. Facebook and Tesla. So Facebook reported their earnings. Their MAUs were stellar. Those guys really run an amazing operation over there. And their earnings, originally there was some confusion over whether their numbers were good or not, and the numbers were good. They had a beat. I have to listen to the conference call for some color on what's going on. The stock is, however, selling off a little bit after hours. So what's the reason for the sell-off if the earnings were good? Well, for those of you who follow me, and if you look at my tweets the other day, I said we were running into the famous, now notoriously infamous progression line, almost to the tick. And I will show this in my weekend review video. And it had run hard. We got into it, so there's a pullback. That's just how it is. Facebook has done this now. What was the last earnings? It was sort of a doji. Then you had a few days of chop, but it essentially resolved higher. Facebook has a gap to fill to 147, and then if it were to get a backside of the channel touch, it would be like right around there. So I think that area for now is an interesting spot. I don't know if I would be chasing Facebook here. I'd probably wait a little bit for a pullback just because it's run so much. Alrighty, yeah, that's my sort of analysis for Facebook, and we'll revisit it again a little lower. Tesla, kind of a similar story. If you remember, I posted a tweet that I was ready to bail at the 1.618 Fibonacci extension at 325.67. It got to 327.66, so I'm a total piece of garbage because I missed $2 on it after calling the long for quite a few points, but I think we're all satisfied with that move. I'm curious to see how this is going to play out with Tesla, because Tesla is a bit of a different story. There's a very high short interest in that, and they have a lot of events that are coming up in the next few months. They have the Model 3 launch coming in, I think, in July, I want to say. I'm not remembering for some reason offhand, and I just killed a bug on my leg. Wonderful. Real live video for you. Anyway, I'm thinking that Tesla may chop and could have a pullback, but I think it's one that I'd be interested in buying. How low can she go? All right, so the big important level for me that kind of turned the tide for me to be bullish on Tesla was 265. There's a gap down at 270. I don't know if we're going to get that low, but I wouldn't be surprised to see a trend or 50 MA touch wherever that might be. The breakout was really 287.39 to 291.42, and I'm not even convinced that we're necessarily going to go down fully. It could just chop here. Seasonally, the summer is great for Tesla, and it tends to peak out whenever. I have to take a look. If you Google when the Hamptons Classic is, that's usually when Tesla tends to peak out, like toward the end of the summer. So I do think that Elon Musk probably won't give the shorts a lot to kind of sink their teeth into. I know a lot of people are short this from lower. You have a lot of very smart, quote-unquote, hedge fund managers that, of course, you know, it's a bubble stock, it's extended, and I think they've been sucking wind for quite some time now. So I think Tesla still has like a 26%. I have to go to check my sources. Let me just do a quick source check on that. For those who are interested in for where I get this information, it's very easy. It's just shortsqueeze.com. 26.45% short interest in Tesla, and it actually increased a full point going into their numbers. So we'll see. Tesla's down a little bit. I'm selfishly, I'm hoping for the pullback to like the 50 MA and trend touch so that I can again reload and sell out of the money puts. I had taken my position off at the aforementioned 325s. So Tesla, they beat their earnings revenue. I'm sorry, they beat their revenues, but they missed on their earnings. But Tesla's not really an earnings story. So what I'll likely do with Tesla, if I'm looking for a quick trade, is this. And this is sort of what I do with all stocks that either go up or down. This, by the way, was all over the place. It was down, up, and now it's just like chopping. I think this is going to resolve on the Elon Musk comments on the conference call. And I don't expect he's going to give the shorts a ton of stuff to sink their teeth into. What I'll do is I'll watch to see tomorrow if what the RTH... By the way, when I say AH or PM or whatever, that means non-trading hours. It means between the time the market closes and the open. And then when I say RTH, I mean regular trading hours, which are 9:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. for stocks and for futures until 4:15. So what I'll be looking to see tomorrow is wherever this bad boy bottoms out in after hours, if when the market opens, can that low either exceed or be a higher low than the after hours low, and then it would either be a short below the 15-minute low or a long above the high if it's a higher low. So that's sort of what I'm thinking. I'm not expecting a huge pullback in Tesla. Maybe, like I said, to that 287 to 290 breakout level, which is really not that much from here. A decent amount from the high, but not terribly high here. And again, I am looking to sell puts on that move. As far as the Facebook goes, where do I think that could pull back to? I should have mentioned that earlier. Alrighty. If the move does resolve down, I think that that could have a pullback. The last big pullback they had was from 133.5 down to 113. So like $20. So there's an important point. Is that right? Wow. The real breakout was down at 133. I don't know if it's going to go all the way down that low, but I think that there will be a play at one of the moving averages. I'd be into selling puts, out of the money puts, maybe at the 50 MA if there's a pullback that far. Short term, I just think it's going to fill this little gap in and maybe like to 145s. That seems to me like where this will kind of hang out. Just so we know, the market maker expected move for this was about $5 on Facebook, and on Tesla, it was $15.77. So you want to kind of take a look to see if this thing was just blocking a spammer. All right, you're gone, Mr. Whatever, basketball. So you have to see also if the move in these stocks is greater than or less than the market maker move. That's also a key for me to judge health. If it's an inside move, like one of these small moves, those tend to not resolve in the wrong direction. If it's an outside move, those tend to resolve in the wrong direction, sort of in the way of the gap. Meaning, like, let's say the move in Tesla was supposed to be $15.77 here. Seriously? Unbelievable. How do I get rid of this junk? All right, another one blocked. All right, so there we go. Anyhow, let's assume that the move was like double that. It would probably continue lower. If the move is inside that, it tends to fill the gap. I had said with Apple, by the way, speaking of the earnings stocks, and I think Apple's worth spending a little bit more time on. I don't think anyone's going to mind. I had said that I thought we would fill the gap because the gap was really small. Apple also tends to do... Oh, come on. Seriously? Why are we getting these spammers? Just blocking just blocking everyone here. All right, so anyhow, we're getting going. Anyway, with regard to Apple, I said I thought we would fill the gap, which we did, and then I thought there would be a rollback. So we're in the process of the rollback. If Apple can get, like I said again, above today's high, I'll assume that the move down was a false move. I know Kramer has on Tim Cook today. I don't really think it's going to make much of a difference for the stock. But what might make a difference is Monday morning Warren Buffett is on, and he could be a... oh, come on. Another block. We got a ton of spammers today. This is incredible. So we'll have to see how that plays out with Apple. But again, above the high of day, I like long. Below the low of day, I like short. So I teased up this video with my take on the cryptocurrencies. I think that has been... I've avoided discussing this because it's not something I really am that interested in. But I'm starting to get a little bit more interested for a few reasons. I've been using GBTC, I guess, as the is what you could look at for Bitcoin. And some of my upside projections are 186.70, which would be the 1.618 Fibonacci of the consolidation range. And then someone's writing, Jeff, I can't read all of that and do the video. I'll take a look at it after the broadcast. If you want to send me if you DM me on Twitter, I'll answer you. And then 2 times the range is 213.10. So that's my take on where I think this Bitcoin could be heading. I don't want to get too into Ethereum, but that is something I'm also interested in. what is my take on the cryptocurrencies? Why are they going up the way they are? So I think it's a combination of a few things, and I'm going to mention it today in the hearing with James Comey. Our representatives in government discussed the Russian criminals using the real estate market in New York City, and I guess in other areas. They're big into Hawaii and in Florida as well. Excuse me. To hide money, basically. I think the cryptocurrencies are being used by the Chinese to get money out of China, but they've cracked down a little bit on that. And I think it's become the vehicle of choice for organized crime, frankly. And what really struck me as interesting, I read and do a lot of research. And I do research in places that I don't think most people would think to research. I don't want to reveal sort of my source. I also know a lot of people. I've lived in New York, my entire life. I was born and raised here. I went to college here. I still live here, so I know a lot of people. Over my years in a past life when I used to work in another industry, I've met and known probably hundreds to thousands of people that I've dealt with in my life here, and I keep contact with a lot of people who I find have useful information. And something I picked up on was, I know a guy. So what I think I picked up on was that the cryptocurrencies are not only being used for high levels of organized crime, which are reported in the news and you could read articles, but they're also now filtering down into like the lower echelons. And I think that's what pushed this last kind of push. I think it's been getting big. You could go to ATMs. I just saw an article someone sent me. They have ATMs in Brooklyn if you want to buy Bitcoin. But I think it's kind of fulfilling the back page economy, for those of you who know what I mean. I think that this has become the modus operandi for crime. And I think that it's really taking off now, like I said, into the lower echelons, which is driving a lot of volume. Overall, I think that these things have moved a hell of a lot fast, and I don't kind of countenance buying them here, even though I do think that they're going higher. I would buy pullbacks. And the reason why I think that these, there you go. Someone just mentioned Bitcoin you could use on porn sites. This is this is like the dark web back page economy payment of choice. This is why this is going up like this. And yes, there is speculation and there's gambling and so on and so forth, and that's fueling it. But the main cause, in my view, is that it's being used as a criminal currency. I don't know how long this is going to last. I'm sure that they're going to crack down on this, but that, in my view, is what's causing it. So why do I think that you can buy pullbacks in this? My answer is that the total market value of Bitcoin and Ethereum, and I don't want to get into like the lower tier ones like Litecoin and so on and so forth, but it's not big enough. It's sort of not a big enough market, and I do think that there is a big market for this. I do expect governments to crack down on this, and at some point there's going to be a hell of a nasty correction in it once this thing starts getting regulated, which it will, in some way, shape, or form. But the technology is evolving. Like, it's pretty impressive. Like, Bitcoin is impressive, and then like Ethereum is sort of even more impressive. So my guess is that this hasn't peaked, and that everyone thinks that this. I've been seeing it compared to the tulip bubble or whatever. Yes, at some point the market will level out when you start getting more, volume into it, but it becomes more overall accepted. But at that point, it's probably going to be a lot higher. So my guess is that the cryptocurrencies have yet to see their peaks. I don't necessarily know that I would be chasing here, but if there is a pullback, and these things have sizable pullbacks to like the 200 MA, that's where the Bitcoin, this GBTC bottomed the last time. That to me seems like an interesting place. So that's my take on the cryptocurrencies. I'm going to bring back a tradition that has been lost. You know, the original Reminiscences of a Stock Operator wasn't a book. It was broken up into sections, and it was put in the, I think it was the Saturday Evening Post, if I recall properly. So I'm going to start peppering in updates on my view on cryptocurrencies into and my findings on them into videos here. I'm also in the beginning stages of a deep dive into artificial intelligence, and I think that there is going to be a great play in that when I finish up my work. Unfortunately, right now I'm limited to kind of my theory that the only people who could sort of afford the AI as is now is going to be government entities. So that would benefit people like who make smart planes or whatever, like Lockheed Martin or Northrop Grumman. NVIDIA makes those chips. I'll get into a little bit more. I'm going to be doing a lot of research on that over the summer. It's going to be my summer project. So that being said, I think we're at early stages of AI. There's no way anyone has missed the boat here. And I don't think that there necessarily is a huge rush to jump into anything here. And I really want to get it right. So that's going to be a new theme for me this summer. We're going to talk more and more about cryptocurrencies, and we're going to talk about artificial intelligence. So that covers that. But I don't want to diminish the sort of the shady aspect of this and how it's being used, because that market is going to only expand until there's some type of regulation, and it doesn't look like there's going to be any regulation immediately. There's nothing immediately pending. So that's my take on that. So I gave you some price levels, and I gave you what I think is driving it. Somebody asked me just now about Dr. Copper. That's a good question. It's pulling back. I don't think I'd get too concerned with it until it really starts breaking the 200 MA, which is down at the range low. So this to me just seems like it's ping-ponging in a range. There's some lower, it looks like it had sort of a failed breakout above the channel. So it might see the channel low, which is down near the 200 MA. But again, not making too much of it until that breaks. If it were to break there, then I think we could see channel low. This has just been kind of consolidating on the backside of the upper end of the channel. So that's my thinking there. If the Fed is going to start getting jiggy with raising rates, that's probably going to help the dollar go higher, which is probably, in my view, what's been weighing partly on a lot of these commodities. The dollar, I'm just looking at the Dixie, it basically has been holding on to around the 200 MA, and today was actually a breakout above the lower consolidation. You had 7 days of consolidation, and the dollar broke up. So I think it probably wants to retest a hundo again at the very least. Maybe even get a channel high test up closer. It's just below 101. It's up near the 100 MA at like 100.90. So I'm watching that in the Dixie. That will not help oil, which I'm not really bullish or bearish on at the moment. I've been watching. It so far is holding, albeit tentatively, down at the last reference low, which is the 61.8 of the range in the 47s and trend. And you have the reference low there. So that's an important level. If oil can hold here, I think it's going to come back up and test the 50 MA. If it breaks below here, I think it's headed to 44s, 45s, maybe even 42s, where I do think that there will be a bounce, but I will say that I think that oil will have more trouble on that rally than it would if it were able to hold here. So 47s are really, really key. Some of the things that I like that I'm seeing in oil is what I didn't like when oil was high, what I said I was cautious, was because Exxon was weak, flashing a lot of relative weaknesses. And now Exxon and Chevron have multiple days. Exxon's back up above the 50 MA quietly. It's making higher lows and higher highs on this particular leg. I don't really see this thing exploding higher until it clears 83, 88. After it clears that, I think it's headed to 85s, maybe even 86s. But it's right now just bouncing in a range between like 83, 84 and down to like 80. So it's kind of building a base, but I do like that I'm seeing relative strength in Exxon over the commodity, because the commodity tends to follow Exxon, not the other way around, as bizarre as that sounds. As far as XLE goes, it's right on it here. This 67 is a very key level. If it loses that, first of all, if it holds it, I think it's going to have another 50 MA test. If it loses it, it could see, I'm just trying to go out further on my charts. There's a gap. Wow, there's a lot of room, actually. There's room to 63s. I see supports in 64s, 63s, but really the gap fill in the 61.8 are down by 61s. So this 67s are key. If not, I'm going to think 64s and potentially 61s. But this has come down a hell of a lot. It really should hold here. I'm on guard also for a look below and fail. So keep that on your radar. Somebody asked me about Disney. Disney hit the downtrend line. It broke out above. Now it's back below. Again, just ran too much. This thing could, believe it or not, pull back quite a ways. There's a small gap down at near the channel low, down like near 104. My guess is the 200 MA would be up around there. So we broke the 50 MA, so we probably should see the 100 MA, which is at 110. That should bounce for now. I think there's some support around 108 to 110. But I think eventually this could come lower. If they dump this hard ahead of the print, I think there'll be a bounce to at the very least a lower high on the actual earnings. So the lower into earnings, the safer. But you're starting, you kind of had this inchworm up. This is also what I didn't love in Facebook, was you had this inchworm up and then this like sort of elevator shaft down. By the way, anyone who has comments, I can't really read and do the broadcast fully if they're long. Send me a DM on Twitter. I will respond to them. My handle is @JustinPulitzer. I promise I'll respond to every last one of them. Just send them over there. All right, so let's draw a fib on this McDonald's, which has moved a lot. Oddly, my level that I was discussing where I thought that this could go to is near a fib. It's the trend is at the 38.2, which I don't really like to use, but the 50% fib is close to that 200 MA. I'd be a buyer of MCD for out-of-the-money short puts, sub 100 strikes, if it did have some kind of big move lower. I don't know that that's going to happen, though. Particularly if oil and gas collapse, that'll be great for Disney, for their theme parks, right? When are they reporting? I think next week. It's like a $4 expected move. Listen, if this comes down into that, my guess would be that the move will be higher. If it rallies back up, it's probably going to have a dump. So it'll be a bit of a Costanza play on that. Advanced Micro Devices, I'm just going in order now. This is a piece of garbage company and a piece of garbage stock, but every dog has its day, and today might be that day. I talked about this being a short when it couldn't go higher on the inclusion in the S&P 500. It took a hell of a long time to break down, so, which is annoying because I had tried short on this. I'm often right, but it sometimes takes a little longer than I'm willing to be patient for. I tend to like getting my results within a reasonable amount of time, and this took a while. And finally, it's down to where I was actually, this is exactly where I thought it would go, down to the 200 MA. So you have a reference low around 942. The 50% fib is $8.68. the real breakout area was right around here, like around $8. So any move lower probably won't be picking up too much. So I could see this area here holding, and maybe this rallies for like a bigger head and shoulders back up to 12, which would, in my view, be an interesting area for it for another attempt at a short. So if you're playing long, I think you could try it against maybe this 942 as a stop. I'd personally like it lower. Like, I would be a big league buyer of this if it ever got down to 7s, just so you know. So this is a big important level here. You really need to see it hold the 200 MA and like this 942 level. Today had a hammer. It closed. I would have liked to have seen this close stronger. So what I would say, if you didn't buy the low today, you could try it right or right out long over today's high with a stop probably below the body of today. So that's my scoop on AMD. We covered Tesla, we covered Facebook, we covered partly Amazon. We did cover that. I said it needs to get back up over 950s. Google looks pretty good. Wow, that sucker ran. I will say this though, Google is pressing the upper end of the channel. So I'd actually be looking to probably, well, this just broke out though. Really just breaking out. If you're long Google trim and trail, it's it's above the channel here. This could just go full on ballistic, but I think you could use the low a day as a stop, 935.21, and I would also use that obviously as a right or right out short entry, because a big body bar like that should not be negated too quickly. So like if tomorrow's down and it loses that, I'd be playing for the gap fill. PayPal. So I've been a PayPal fanboy for a long time. That also, by the way, fits in with that whole cryptocurrency stuff with their peer-to-peer payments. I think that they are doing very well. One of the big highlights that I liked in Apple's earnings was the huge increase in Apple Pay. And that immediately told me that the play was PayPal. So this was up big on earnings. It had follow through. It's holding up. The only problem is that the channel high is just a little bit higher in the 50s. And I think a lot of people are going to want to like sell 50. I'd be a buyer if this had any pullback into get close to the gap fill. I'd like to reload. So this could just chop sideways and go. But as far as I'm seeing, I think it has like another buck or so. And that's probably when I'll be looking to peel off some of my play and get back in lower. That is, believe it or not, one of my biggest positions. And it's been for a while, and it's been getting bigger. So I'm glad it resolved higher. Silver, holy cow. I actually sold some puts today in silver just because this thing has gotten so ridiculously steep. Wow, this is amazing how this has come down actually. It had halted at the 61.8. It's got a little bit more. Listen, this could revisit the low, the 14.85, but longer term, I'm sort of more bullish on silver. As far as this goes, and I am starting to reload here. Today was actually the first day I had some orders in, and they went off. So I'm starting to sell out of the money puts here. So that's my scoop on this. Silver should have a rally at some point. I don't know that the selling is fully over. This might want to revisit the low, but this is now starting to get steep enough and with big enough body candles that I'm starting to get a little bit interested in it. Netflix was one of those ones, again, I'm just going in order here, that was one of the winners, right, which moved up on earnings. They had a professional gap on, by the way, if you're looking for what a professional gap looks like, 425 is a professional gap. And then it consolidated for a few days inside that day and then went. And so this should grind higher. Seasonally, the summer is not good for Netflix. Some of the biggest declines, oddly, I'm always in it for those too. Like, I'm always in that for the short. I've had some of my biggest successes in Netflix short, believe it or not, and it's always been in the summer. I remember, I have a really crazy story about this. I remember I was once on the I think it was 2000 and I don't remember the year, but it was the year that they lost the Stars deal, and I was sitting on the beach, or I think I was at the beach in East Hampton, and no, I'm sorry, in Southampton, and the cell service there on those beaches is a joke. So I was just watching this stock trade, and I don't know what it was. It just this is what I do, even when I'm on the beach. It's crazy. But it was near the end of the day, and I just had to be short Netflix. I don't know what it was. I sometimes get these feelings about things, and I like leaped out of my seat like a madman. I was actually with my mom. She thought I was nuts, and I'm like scrambling for my for some shade and whatever. I had been looking at the stock all day, and I'm scrambling to try to get the order in. She's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm trying to get short Netflix. And she's like, well, if you feel that passionate about it, short it for me too. So anyway, I put the short in. The next day I woke up and I was all excited, and I thought the stock was going to go down big, and it didn't. It just sat there, and the next day the same thing. By the third day, though, I came in after being at the pool, and it was the day that they lost the Stars deal, and that thing got pancaked. So I was short for then, and then I was also short in the flash crash. I hadn't even realized that I had put a sell order in, and it had triggered. And the stock, I came in, I was pleased to see it down like $12 or $15 from where I had shorted it, and I covered it very quickly. It actually wound up recovering. I shorted, I don't think it was near the exact low of the day, but it was pretty low. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Where is Netflix going? I think 164s to 168s. There's different measured moves there with the 1.618 fib right in the middle at 166s. So any further strength in Netflix, I'd probably be looking to book profits in, and it's still a buy the dip, frankly. And probably the same thing in Amazon and Google, because they are the ones that were up early. The ones that go down later tend to have like further corrections. So that's the story in Netflix. Someone wanted to talk about, let's just round it up with these last two. AIG is not one that I follow that often, although I have had some pretty good success trading it in the past. I used to sell a lot of puts on this name when it was sort of first recovering, and then it just got away from me, and I haven't really looked back at it for a while. It's looking kind of junky, right? They report, this looks like it's going to dump again, frankly. Let's see, when did they report already? Yeah, they reported on 5/3. Hold on, are they up or down? Hold on, intraday, 1 day, 5 minutes. Oh, it's up, wow, all right, so that's interesting. That to me looked like it wanted to dump again. Interesting. Where is it now? It's not really up that much though. It's now around the 62s. All right, let's go into this one daily. 9 months daily. All right, so we're in the 62s. So the 50 MA, very simple. This has to hold the 50 MA. 50 and 200 MA confluence on pullbacks. If it loses that, it's a short. So I would think this wants to see the 100 MA, which was where it looks like it wanted to stall. I would need to see it clear the after hours high, frankly. Intraday, let's go intraday 1 day. Let's do 2 day actually. 2 day, 5 minute. Yeah, it needs to clear the 100 MA, or else I think it's a little iffy. So what you want to watch tomorrow, if you're looking for this, let's say you're already long, you want to see the opening range, if it can clear that high or not, and if it can't, it might be vulnerable to lower. You'd want to use the 15-minute low or even 5-minute low as a stop. If you're looking for long, what you'd want to see is this thing open up, and then at some point clear that 63.5. The better thing would be is if it chopped sideways for a while and then cleared it. Where would I be looking for this to go? 2 years daily. Probably to the top of the gap, which is the bottom of the gap, where it starts, 64.90 probably is where this thing would go. Whether or not it fills it, I'm not sure. I like the insurance companies. AIG is a good one, but this to me is a very, very choppy pattern, and I need to see it start clearing some major moving averages here. What's interesting about the pattern is that the last earnings, it had this little lift up and then dumped, And now this time it had the lift up too, but it didn't dump. So this is important. 50 MA, it has to hold the 50 MA. If it's anything below there, forget it, it's a short. So that's AIG. UAA, Under Armour. So, sorry, I'm amazed that I was able to do this video without sneezing or blowing my nose. This allergy season is terrible. Under Armour is pulling back. I like it right or right out long at the 50 MA, 20 MA confluence. It's weird. It tested into the gap and then it's pulling back to kind of, I guess, fill the gap. So somewhere between that gap fill and the 50 and 20, like the 50 MA was a lot of resistance the last couple times. That should be support now, the 50-20 MA confluence if you want to try right or right out. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. And wow, we covered all this stuff and right in time too. Anyhow, if you liked my video, hit a thumbs up. The best way to say thank you is to retweet them when I post them on Twitter. So go on the Twitter and just hit the retweet, please. Anyhow, if you missed it or came in late, it'll be rebroadcast. It just has to like process or whatever after I hit the finish button. If you're not following me on Twitter, my handle is @JustinPulitzer. If you had questions that I didn't answer, please send me a DM. You could just send it to me @JustinPulitzer on Twitter. I will respond. Have a great rest of the week, and cheers.